Do you want to get dirty? Do you think you can take the pickup truck or the SUV that you bought in the shop and bring it out into the world? Surprisingly, you can. We are with Beeboy Bargas, one of our favorite friends who has brought me through things I didn't think I would survive. I've been told I look very good doing off road, and that is only because I watch B-Boy's eyes and do exactly what he tells me to do. So we're going to bring him on board today to tell us what it would be like to take your unmodified vehicle and how far you can actually go off road. So this is the Cars Casually gang. Good morning, everyone, or good evening, actually. We have with us the usuals. We have Chris, we have Francis, we have Nix, we have Paolo, we have G, and we have our guest, professional off-road instructor, B-Boy Bargas. Hello, everyone.
Hi, good morning.
Round of applause.
B-Boy, so when we walk into a showroom and walk out, can we actually do all the things that you, well, not that you can do, but the things that we think we can do with something like a simple ladder frame SUV like a Fortuner or what? Is it a realistic thing to do?
You might be surprised how capable these box stock vehicles can get, no? If we're talking about, say, a layman, no? Getting his hands on a modern box stock four-wheel drive, these medium category SUVs, they are so well equipped, no? And we'll be looking at a few on the videos later, that they'll do better than modified vehicles of 20 years ago. In some cases, it's just a question of ground clearance already.
Oh, wow.
Traction. There are two things important in off-roading, no? Traction and ground clearance. With the modern vehicles, they've addressed the traction issue almost completely. It's not just a matter of the ground clearance. So that's going to be the biggest limiting factor now. And I'm assuming the driver has a little common sense, no? Understanding the limit where it's going to take the car.
Wait. Let's build that common sense today.
So talking about
I've seen some guys with super modified vehicles and went way over their heads. And wow, it didn't turn out too well.
So talking about modern tech, B-Boy, are you still a proponent of manual is better than automatic, or has the tech caught up? Like the 4x4 automatic tech, has it caught up to surpassing a manual transmission?
Oh, actually, I've been ever since the arrival of the common rail diesel engine. The transmissions have been finely tuned for these engines, and actually even before the common rail engines. For the beginner, an automatic actually gets, if you know how to use the gears, an automatic transmission will be able to get better grip than a guy in a stick.
So these new 4-wheel drive systems that come out, like Mitsubishi's
Super Select,
like Super Select and Ford's various off-roading modes, they actually do their jobs. It's not just marketing.
We call it the easy stick, particularly on my Everest. No? It's just a knob, you stick it in there. But there are limitations, guys. On that
of course.
How far can you go?
There are limitations.
Up a mountain, good.
What do you mean?
What kind of limitations, for example?
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Fords. No, with the terrain response, I think if that's the right terminology, no, they have 4 settings: sand, mud, rock, etc. No,
right.
They actually operate without having to engage the front and rear axles mechanically, no, which is very contrary to what a regular 4-wheel drive is. They have a mechanically linked front and rear axles. But these cars have so much torque in them, no, that all they have to do is manage the distribution of drive on all 4 wheels, and it gets them through. But I wouldn't rely on it all the way because you'll be overheating your automatic transmission fluid.
Okay.
It's great. They will work wonderfully. But don't expect them to do it continuously for an extended period of time. Eventually, you'll have to go to the hard knob again instead of the easy knob.
I have a question, B-boy. What
Nope.
is what is parang like a too long length of a time to use that? Like 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour?
10 maybe if you really push it
Oh
hard.
wow. Oh,
Yep.
okay. So it's
This
kind of
is
like in an
any of
emergency.
them actually in all-wheel drive mode. You can talk about the Mitsubishi with its all-wheel with Super Select 2. If they don't have their drivetrain front and rear axles mechanically linked, eventually you will get that warning, that transmission fluid temperature warning. That's where you back
Okay.
off and you let it cool down and then stick to the regular transfer case of engaging the front and the
Okay.
rear mechanically.
Okay, so
Okay.
basically, what that is if I'm a non off roader, what you're telling me is that I do not even have to touch that knob or make those setting changes myself. If all I'm looking at is a 1 minute crossing through mud, I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
I let it
You
do
just
its
put it
thing.
on, let's say in the case of the Ford, you just put it in mud mode, drive it through. If you're not going to struggle with it for maybe over 2 minutes, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
And
but
Mm.
it's
if you're
something new.
looking at, let's say, like a long crossing, or you start realizing you can't get out as easily as you thought, that's when you start uh,
Locking
changing
the
your.
front and rear axles, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
When
that's
you want to lock the front and rear axles, what's the usual setting? Because usually these things say
Okay,
mud,
it
snow,
depends on the
whatever.
manufacturer's setup. No, in the case of a Mitsubishi, you just pull the lever with the where it says that there's a double L on a four
Yeah.
and the
Or
double L.
okay.
That's
LLC.
no. Yeah.
yeah, that's the four low lock or the 4HL for the four high lock.
I know. Yeah.
Kasi
Are
4H,
those
if
4H,
I'm not
mechanical
mistaken, is
locks?
all-wheel drive, right?
yeah. So basically, there it's an all-wheel drive, no,
Hmm.
and then you just stick it into with that extra L on the shift knob,
Yeah.
and that mechanically links the front and the rear axles
Mm.
together.
Okay.
Okay. That's when it mechanically links. Okay, got
Okay.
it.
So
Yes,
that's like the old school mechanical connection things where you're just going
exactly.
four low, four
Mm.
high. Okay.
Yes,
But it's
exactly.
now an electronic switch.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember when
Sometimes
you'd
it's
have to
even
actually.
automatic. No? Um,
Yeah.
in the case of the Ford, they can actually direct fluid that can lock up the front and rear axles using fluids instead of a mechanical link, no? So that they can manage the drive system from the front to the rear, left or right. But like I said, the downside if you stay there too long, um, with that system, you could overheat the automatic transmission fluid. A light, it'll
Oh,
just come up, you let it cool down, and then you proceed again.
okay. And a lot of cars being sold now that are supposed to be 4x4, they actually
Mhm.
don't have rear locking diffs. So how important is a rear locking diff if we're talking about going off road?
Good question. That's
Because
a good
not not
question.
all not all
Yeah.
models have that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
even if they're
Well,
supposed to be 4x4.
So it's four
well,
by four
right,
enough. I guess that's the
right
question.
now, no. The leaders in the segment, particularly the Mitsubishi, Nissan, Toyota, Ford, all have rear differential locks on their mid-level SUVs.
Okay.
That makes them extremely capable. Now, the rest of the pack are catching up, but yeah, most of them already are already equipped with the rear differential.
Yeah.
Having um, realizing that it is not just a performance improvement, it's actually a safety equipment once you're out there. It gives you that extra confidence to get through.
So that's an important spec to look at if you're thinking about going off road with your new
Oh,
car, because
very,
that's
very
that's not
much.
something you can
Okay.
add as a modification.
Oh,
That's not
you
something you can
actually
do.
can, no?
Oh, you
Um,
can. Okay.
you can. About 10 years ago, almost all of these guys don't have them, but it is aftermarket equipment is available. There's various Australian and Chinese brands available for the more popular makes, no? Which brings me to why you need to buy a popular make, no? The one
Right.
that's accepted by the market, because that's what the aftermarket supports. Now, even today, no,
Okay.
you have these
Hmm.
SUVs with rear differential locks. but you can also buy front differential locks for them from the aftermarket. So it's not as costly as before. You have to buy front and rear.
Okay. Well, going back to
Never been-
stock. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, back to stock.
No,
back to stock.
going back to stock. In the meantime, you mentioned Nissan, and we have a video of you or someone in a Nissan going through what looks like a very difficult scenario here.
It was very sticky. I was taking the video of that one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The driver was
here,
a
right here.
participant of a Nissan event.
And it looks like at this moment that that there was no hope left because he's just spinning tires at this point.
We had actually an instructor on board telling the guy to keep going. That's what made him get through, no? But the situation there was to the common layman, they would have begged off already once they hear the RPM, just a little over 2,000 RPMs, no?
Yeah.
And with the instructor on board who has a more knowledge mechanically, he was able to instruct the driver to take the car a little further from the driver's normal driving habits. I mean, these cars can run up to 5,000 RPMs for a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds continuously. But the biggest part here is the regular Joe behind the wheel. They'll barely take it over. They'll rarely take it over 2,500 RPMs. No? You have to remember that particular Terra comes equipped with a rear differential lock, combined with, and this is very important. No? Some brands actually have a rear differential lock that works with the electronic traction control up front at the same time. No? While some brands, and one coming soon, will not let that happen. He will only rely on his rear differential locks. But the front traction control won't work with the rear differential lock. But you'll know that in a few days. So.
In situations like that, when do you know that it's time to just stop pushing and lift your feet off the gas?
That's my question.
And how do you know when to keep pushing?
Good question. If you're still moving forward, not downward, forward, then you just keep going. It's that simple.
Okay.
If
That's
you're
a really good point.
accelerator and you're still not moving forward, you're probably stepping on the accelerator too much. The idea is to let your tires bite.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's where things comes in pretty weird. No? Layman would just mash the accelerator and spin away and dig himself to Hong Kong with all that traction. Okay.
Like
The
me.
thing there is, you actually have to back off to let the tires bite. How do you do that? You play with the gears. Because if you have too much torque, and believe me, all these cars have a lot of them nowadays, no? You'll just keep spinning and losing traction. You let the tires bite. No? Back off a little if it's still moving forward. If it stopped moving forward, you might be surprised by backing off a little, just maintaining that forward motion will already see you through. If you noticed in the video, he already stopped. He was almost stopping.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have quit already at that point.
The engine, the RPM went lower, then it started moving forward.
Because it was allowed to bite. Tama?
Yes. Now, there are several ways to do that, no? You can play with the gears. Maybe you could be in third or fourth gear already at a high RPM. That way, it gives the opportunity for the tires to, the term is get less torque. So you don't just shear the tractive surface. You use the gears, or you just back off on the accelerator, allow the tires to get some bite, and then gently play with the accelerator. It's consistent with as slow as possible, as fast as necessary when off-road driving.
Although from that video, it looked like the tires were completely caked in mud. So even at that point, it was still getting grip.
Those
Yeah.
are road standard tires, but they still can.
So it was still
Maybe
getting
they
some
might
level
get
of
into
grip.
trouble if they were on a steeper incline, no?
Yeah.
But on a flat surface, that's not an issue with these cars nowadays.
All right. So once again, to everyone watching, these are completely bone stock Nissan Terras that we're
Yeah.
showing here.
Mhm.
So we got another video here in a similar scenario, also in a Nissan Terra. So why don't you talk us through this, B-Boy?
Okay. This one I was following the Terra.
He was actually going back, and this is the uphill scenario you're talking about.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
this point, the instructor told him to back off, roll back, get into more
Yeah.
level ground, and try to get a little more forward motion. And then,
Momentum.
yes, and then gently play with the accelerator and let the tires find traction. Remember, these are street tires. That's a very, very, very slippery surface. That's
Yeah.
actually clay, no?
Oh, clay is really tough. I know.
And as you can see, thanks to its rear differential lock, um, the electronic traction control working with the rear diff lock, they're not even in low range. They actually want to use high range in these conditions. The engine has the torque to compensate, and the higher speed at a higher gear ratio, numerically, ratio wise, gives it a little more drag for the tires to bite. So you really actually have to control the torque of these
Yeah.
things to get traction.
Mhm.
So you
And
can't
then-
just let the automatic transmission and all the gadgetry. You can't just let it take over. There is definitely some human involved in getting out of situations like
Oh, I'm
this.
sure.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest about it, all of these driver aids were developed to make
Yeah.
off-road driving easier, supposedly, for the driver. But with all this technology, you actually
Yeah.
need to understand how they work for it to benefit the individual.
Yeah.
So if at the end of the day, if the driver just doesn't want to understand what's going on, then to a certain point, all of this might be more of a hindrance to them.
Mm.
Okay. So let's talk about water wading depth.
Okay.
As everyone knows, our country is a flood-prone country, especially in Metro Manila, and a lot of people believe that I'm gonna get an SUV so that I can just barrel through the floods. Now, what are
Is that
what are the
true?
misconceptions? What are the misconceptions that people think about going through deep water?
Okay. That is 1,200 millimeters of water at its deepest. With the current coming in from the right
Yeah.
side of the screen. No?
It's like the
I
logo's
would-
getting covered.
I would think about abandoning ship at this point. Like,
I wouldn't even
Oh,
cross
no,
anymore. I'm like,
having fun already.
at least the car's now clean.
When we were at the Terra launch, you guys remember, for those who were there, they announced that the car has a 600 millimeter wading depth.
right. This is way beyond
Uh,
that, though.
This is double of what the 600 millimeter. This was truth of the matter. As manufacturers, they have to be very conservative with their numbers, no? Because
Okay.
they have no control of who will be using them. So just to play it safe, any regular Joe would be with the pressing the right pulling the right levers and the right buttons. We'll see them through 600 millimeters, which to the average Joe is pretty deep, no? So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if the guy knows what he's doing, he can definitely go way over manufacturers' limitations on the vehicle. If the individual knows what they're getting
Yeah.
into.
Okay, so what are the
B-boy.
things that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carl.
No. Just quick question. 600 meters, 600 millimeters. Is that a normal wading depth for a pickup truck?
Well,
Or SUV?
you were there. To those who were there at the launch of the Terra in Clark,
Yeah. There.
everybody was asking 600 only. The standard now back there was around 800 millimeters.
800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we had Nissan has this other video of the car, the Terra, in 800 millimeters. This one is an unofficial Nissan video
Okay.
of
But if you're the
1.2.
guy driving the car, what's your gauge? I mean, you're talking about you don't want to go above what part of the
Well,
car, as an example.
well, first and foremost, I'd like to know how deep the water is. No, before I went in there, I had my other car go ahead. Something else that was more capable to get an idea of how deep the water was and how the current was working. No? So having assessed that, understanding the vehicle, the Terra, and its limitations and capabilities, made me very confident na, okay, we'll follow that car. So
Okay.
bottom line is, if you're not sure, don't do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
the bottom line here.
So that we don't encourage our viewers to just recklessly charge towards
No,
floods,
no.
what are the things that they should keep in mind before just like carelessly going through a flood in their SUV, thinking that they can confidently get through it? What are the precautions that they should take, or what are the things that they should keep in mind not to do?
First and foremost is a cubic meter of water weighs about half a ton or a ton. I'm not sure. No, so if you compute the weight of water on a frontage of a vehicle, we're talking about a couple of tons there already. No, and you need all the torque in your transmission can your all the torque your engine has that can be multiplied by your transmission and your transfer case to push that much weight out of your way. Um, we've seen it happen in so many videos. They dive into deep water, even in their big four-wheel drives, but they don't use the low-range gear for the torque
Yeah.
multiplication to
Mm.
push the water out. So they end up stalled. Water gets into their exhaust, and that's it.
Generally, if the water reaches the hood, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? Or is that
Okay.
it?
Done properly, it's
Yeah.
not, no? Because actually, you're actually if you look at the video again, we're creating a bow wave. Water
Yeah.
has not entered the engine compartment. We're actually
Okay.
pushing water away
Mm.
from getting into the engine compartment. So it's a fine balance of having enough go. That means you have enough torque to push the water away so that it doesn't build up in your engine compartment. And
Okay.
understanding the level of the intake level of the engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
You men-
Well,
following
you
that
mentioned
car. That's the one
That's
I
the one
used to
that's
gauge the
gauging.
water depth.
Okay.
So
Mm.
I was following this
okay.
guy.
You
That
mentioned
car.
you mentioned the exhaust. You mentioned as long as the water doesn't get into the exhaust. Is that the main concern you would have?
More of the intake actually. What happens with the exhaust is if you can't blow out the exhaust gases, your engine will cut off if your RPM is too low. If your engine revolution is too low that you don't have enough pressure to push the water out of the exhaust, that's where the problem starts. So you start building up gases in your exhaust. Eventually, your engine will just have no oxygen because it's all gas in there, and just stall out, and then you're stuck. And the restart becomes a problem because all your electronic systems are wet, and that's where the problem starts. So if you're going to go and commit and know what you're doing, that's all there is to it.
Okay.
okay. So what can you tell the people who buy snorkels and attach them to the cars and think, okay, I've got a snorkel, I can go submarine on this thing, you know?
No. Oh my god.
Yeah, but there are a lot of
Actually,
people who think
no.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They, what most of them don't know is they need a wading kit on their axles, transmissions, and their transfer cases. Um, it's like a snorkel for those components so that water doesn't seep into the differentials, the transmissions.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's more pala
and then
involved than just a snorkel.
understand where your computer boxes. Earlier computer controlled common rail engines some had computer boxes located just under the passenger front seat. That's not a good place to have them. No? Until finally, most of them started mounting them on the highest point in their firewall of the car, which gives it a lot of protection for water.
Yeah.
In the case of that Terra, we actually had there's no kidding around. We had that carpet wet with that kind of depth. We made it through, but the carpet was wet. No ifs or buts about that.
Mhm.
Where did the water
So-
enter?
Through the door seals. Now, remember, these cars are hermetically sealed, but it's just a rubber seal. Given enough time, water, being water, will be able to get in through these seals. Given enough pressure and time, it will get in.
Okay. But water
so-
inside your cabin is not something to panic about necessarily.
Oh, yo, not at all. Unless you have a car that has its computer box on the floor, then you
Okay.
worry.
Okay. Oh, I have a
Only
question,
what you're
B-Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I saw the river crossing, their windows were open. Did they open it because they had to for safety, or just because they wanted to take video?
Well, two things, no? One is primarily they wanted to take a video. Number two, I always keep my windows open when I'm going to do a deep water crossing. Easier to get out of the car.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
you
because,
teaching me that.
Case in point, no? You guys heard about that FJ Cruiser that went out to rescue 14
Yeah,
pickups up in Kanay a few
Mm.
months ago?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the cardinal rules they broke was when they were going to rescue the 14 pickups was they didn't bring down their windows. They ended up having to smash the windows open to get out of the FJ when they rolled in the river.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's
I know.
basically
I was
to
there when they
avoid,
were pulling the car out.
yeah, to avoid being trapped inside.
RIP.
Well, yeah,
for-
it's actually a cardinal rule. No? Actually, in river crossings, we would rather we wouldn't be on seatbelts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember
You have to
B-Boy.
go scrambling around them.
Yeah.
But that's
That was-
taking it a little on the extreme side. No? A
Yeah.
stock vehicle, as a rule of thumb, if you have a stock tire, no? And your water level is just enough to put the tire underwater, that height, that's still okay. That's safe. That's just as a
Okay.
rule of thumb for a box stock four-wheel drive.
Okay.
It's might not be healthy if you don't have the wading plugs for the axles and the transmissions,
Mhm.
but just get a gear change oil and that's it. You're good to go again.
Okay.
So this
What
is
do you
like
So,
mean?
for,
Can you
For
say that
ordinary-
again? Like, about the gear change oil? Is that an after the fact thing?
Oh yeah, after you just have it checked. If you think there's no contamination of water on your gear oil, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, what we do after extended periods is if we know there was water in the axles, we'll just open it up a bit, let the water spill out, the white milky stuff, and then close it again and use it again.
Okay. So you sent a video here of a D-Max caught in the sand.
Okay.
Can you tell us about this?
Okay, this car at that time has zero electronic driver aids. It only has a limited slip differential, no? And we were driving up on an incline on very, very soft sand. No? So everything was against it. Bottom line, we didn't even deflate the tire pressures. The idea, the whole exercise here is what can a driver do in a box stock pickup, four-wheel
I
drive,
see the
without
movie going.
electronic driver aids to get out of a stranded situation? No? Okay, yeah, let me walk you through. Take note of the tires. Number one, they're not spinning so fast. That's what I meant a while ago by just getting enough traction and maintaining a certain forward motion so that you don't kill your momentum. No? So this required a lot of discipline on the throttle.
Yeah.
No? But and yet we had enough torque to. You see, if you look at that incline in front of the tires,
Yeah.
it's just like climbing a mountain with that kind of an incline. Only it's
Right.
flat, no? Because that's the angle itself that you're climbing in a real climb situation. So basically, if you can measure that angle, that's the angle this D-Max is now climbing up a hill. Only it's flat.
Wow. And if you go too much on the gas, you get a little impatient, then
You
you'll
get
just
too
keep
much
spinning.
torque. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just dig in and you get stuck. Remember, this one has no electronic driver aids. I think I
Wow.
was playing at around just over 2,000 RPM, easing up on the accelerator a little. When I feel that the car is just going to sink in, back off a little, and then when you're losing forward motion, baby the accelerator forward a little, and you maintain the forward progress, and you'll see it through. And that was no electronic driver aids there, just a old mechanical limited slip differential.
Awesome. Okay, tell us about this video.
Galing.
Okay. Go ahead, Carl.
Hold on.
Here. Tell us about this video
Okay.
here.
This is a video of how an ideal suspension setup should work on difficult terrain. Take note on how the wheel the wheel travels into the wheel arch, no? And then look at the left side and see how the other side drops into the hole. That's what we call articulation or axle play, no? Bottom line is it follows the terrain that to keep all four tires on the ground for better traction without having the need of a locking differential. So that's a critical thing in
Wow.
off-road, on an
Do
off-road
all
vehicle.
do all SUVs have the same flex? Do you think, like modern SUVs sold by Nissan and Ford, do they more or less have the same travel?
More or less. No, getting more travel would require a suspension upgrade normally, you know. But yeah, they probably more or less play on the same
All right.
bandwidth, so to speak. Now, this one in the video is a little more on the extreme side, no? Operated coils, operated
Yeah.
shock absorbers, without having the need to resort to the rear differential lock.
Does anyone else have any questions for B-Boy?
No, no. Like, B-Boy, question for the viewers out there: is there a way for them to learn all this off-roading stuff?
Well, I'm doing a clinic on the end of March. No, I normally do private driving clinics. No, I'm doing one at the end of March. If they are interested, but we do a limit on the number of people who will participate in these clinics. They can get in touch with me on Facebook Messenger, and if there's enough of them, I can do a clinic for them or arrange a group, and then. Because to me, as far as modifying a four-wheeler, first thing that needs to be modified is the driver first before the vehicle.
Mr.
I believe our friend Cookie Ramirez felt the same way about driving on the circuit. Yeah. Do the driver first before the mods on the car.
Yeah. So, I guess the practical use of all of this is during rainy season, going floods and all that. Correct? I mean, is that
I'm sorry, it's a little. There's a
Yeah,
delay
it's a
on
bit
the.
choppy, G.
yeah? Okay. Practical use of all of this is going through in the rainy season.
I think Jared's asking for like the viewer out there that's gonna planning to go through a flood. What would you suggest them? Like, how would you suggest they tackle it?
Yeah.
First, let one of those big trucks that are brave enough to go through and gauge how deep the water is.
Let them go
Okay,
through
that's a
first.
For
that's
the
a good
same
tip.
reason, when we're on the trail, we walk it first. We do the measuring with a stick. We get a feel of what the ground is underwater. If it's soft, is it hard? Will it support the vehicle? How deep it is, and only then will we decide whether we give it a go or not.
Okay, so information first and foremost. So if you don't
Yes.
know, don't try.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
contrary to what it looks like. It's not a hillbilly redneck thing that you
Yeah,
just start in
yeah.
and no. The other way
Okay,
around.
so like okay, let's say the average person, he has an idea of like how deep it is and like how far it is. What's the next like step he should do mentally?
Okay. Like I said, if it doesn't go over your tires, you'll probably get through as long as you don't let stall in the middle of the crossing.
Okay.
For these SUVs with low range gears, so I don't
Okay.
care how hard that bottom is, you'll still be floating. So you're best that you're in four-wheel drive, low range. So if in case
Okay.
you get, this is what happened to one patrol in particular in Araneta. No, he floated, lost traction, was not in four-wheel drive. So when his tires landed, there was no traction, and he just continued floating. But if he was in four-wheel drive low, every time two of his tires would hit the ground, that would give him traction to move forward.
Oh, okay, okay. So yun, so like four-wheel drive, four-wheel
Low
low,
range,
no? Low range.
low range to get that extra torque to push all that weight in front of you.
Okay, okay.
It's not about
Interesting.
height, believe me. It's still
Okay.
traction issue.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, we've gone through all this, and just so people have this understanding, the first time I did something like this with B-Boy, I did it with a Indian-made two-wheel drive manual pickup truck. So as smart as all these systems are, you really need to be smart enough to use them, as B-Boy said. And while all the modern vehicles generally have a lot more intelligent systems working for you, as B-Boy also said, you better know your stuff as well. Okay, so you don't have to be you might have to be a bit smarter because you have so much ability underneath your feet. But the positive thing is these are all. I mean, we've been talking mainly, except for B-Boy's Monster, mainly about stuff you can buy off the shelf with tires that come with the car you buy. So, having said all that, we actually want to do more. We've always wanted to do more with B-Boy. We never have that time, oddly enough. But we'd like to explore this a bit more for purpose-built situations like what happens when you're stuck on a highway and they tell you can't go because you're flooded or whatever. We'll do that another time. Right now, we'd like to say thank you very, very much to B-Boy for giving us a quick insight. As always, I learned something new from him every time I talk to him. Happily, it's recorded this time, so now I'll remember it. But
Join us at the clinic end of the month.
I will try. You know how many times I try to do that, right?
Do we need our own vehicles, B-Boy, for that, or?
You guys can normally borrow any vehicle from the brands. So
Yeah. I'll bring a sports car.
that shouldn't be a problem with them.
Yeah. Okay.
Just let them know.
Just don't tell them what you're gonna put it through.
Oh, no,
It's
some of them
B-Boy.
are used to it already. Once they know
Yeah.
that I'm doing the clinic,
It's
they'll
B-Boy.
normally let
They'll tell us.
Yeah. Most of them are fine with it. Like
Yeah.
Mitsubishi for one. Like I tell them naman if I'm gonna bring it off road, like for courtesy, and then they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, just let
Why?
them know for courtesy.
Yeah. But the point of all that is that yes, again, to be clear, if we do get the opportunity, as most people don't, to borrow a car like this, it is done because we are testing it and because we are proving that what B-Boy is telling us is correct, which is these are box stock, off the showroom floor vehicles that, with a little bit of intelligence and caution, can be used far more aggressively than we think they can. As B-Boy
Well,
has
there
said
will
as well, common sense.
There will be 3 new, more than above average capability four-wheel drive pickups being launched this month. So you probably get your hands on one of them and join me at the end of the month.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, B-Boy,
Yes,
for, as
Pleasure's all
always,
mine.
Thank you,
Thank
B-Boy.
you.
explaining the world to us.
I learned so much.
This time was not enough. I wish we had
No.
more time to talk about the stuff we
Yeah.
want to talk about.
It's
Sorry
never
again,
is,
guys,
but-
for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll make
It's B-Boy's fault this
just
time.
let
We
me
can
know
blame him.
ahead. I'll make time for you guys always.
We shall. We
Much
shall.
appreciated.
Thank you so much, everyone. This has been the Cars Casually Gang with our special guest, B-Boy Bargas, the off-road guru. So this has been Chris. This has been Francis. This has been Paolo. This has been Nick. This has been G. I'm Carl. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and we will get dirty once again soon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.